Am I the a-hole refusing to meet with my half-sister because I don't deserve that honor? So, this is rather simple and messy. So, I'm a 24-year-old girl. I'm an affair baby. My dad is pretty old, 75, and my mom is 60. Now, my dad, before I was even a thought, was married to another woman. But then he met my mom, they had me, and things got complicated. When I was about 4 years old, my dad decided to leave his first wife, and 2 years later, he married my mom. It sounds like something out of a TV show, right? Because of all this drama and the big age differences between everyone, I never really got to know my dad's side of the family. It's like I popped up out of nowhere for them, and they didn't know how to deal with it. But honestly, I'm totally fine with that. My mom's side of the family is awesome, and they've given me all the love and support I could ever ask for. So we've got this unspoken deal with my dad's family where they kinda ignore me, and I act like my dad was the only child in his family. Weird, but it works for us. Now here's where it gets a little interesting. Despite this let's ignore each other agreement, there's one person on my dad's side who decided she didn't want to follow that rule. My half-sister. She's much older than me, 55 years old. And just to add a bit more spice to the story, my dad was kind of a big deal back in the day. He had a good amount of money, especially when he and my mom started dating. He made sure his first daughter, my half-sister, got a good education, landed a solid job at a law firm, and even bought her a fancy apartment. So she's pretty well off thanks to him. To sum it up, my life's a bit like a soap opera. Born from a secret relationship, part of a family that pretends I don't exist, and the exception of a half-sister who broke the rule of indifference. Despite the drama, I've got a wonderful family with my mom, and that's what really matters to me. My half-sister was not happy at all when I was born. She felt like because of me, some of the money that our dad could have given her would now be shared with me. And she actually said this out loud to my mom. Can you believe it? But it didn't stop there. My mom had a really tough time when she was pregnant with me. It wasn't easy for her at all. And my sister made it even harder. According to what my mom told me, and my dad and grandparents agree, my sister was really mean to her during that time. She would bother my mom a lot, to the point where my mom had to go to the hospital because of all the stress. And get this, my sister somehow managed to call my mom, even in the hospital, and said something really awful. She wished that my mom would lose me, which is just the meanest thing to say. Later on, when my sister and my mom saw each other again, my sister told my mom that I was worthless and didn't deserve to be part of the family or to be called her sister. She even said she'd rather give all her stuff to charity than let me inherit anything from her. And all this time, my sister has never had a family of her own. No partner, no kids, just her. So, even with all that drama with my half-sister, I didn't really see her much growing up. Maybe only about 3 or 4 times when I was little. Then, when I was a teenager, she decided to give me some gifts. But guess what? These gifts were just some old clothes of hers that she didn't want anymore. And to top it off, she sent them over in a trash bag, as if she was making some sort of joke. I remembered what she said before about giving things to charity, so that's exactly what I did with those clothes. It's kind of ironic when you think about it. Now here's where things take an unexpected turn. Everyone thought my mom married my dad for his money, but life had other plans. Not long after they got married, my dad had an accident and couldn't work anymore. So, all those stories about my mom being after my dad's wealth? Totally not true. It was actually my mom who ended up taking care of us, making sure I had everything I needed growing up. She's the real MVP in this story. Fast forward to now, I've moved to another country and am living my own life. I'm studying, planning to get married soon, and doing pretty well for myself. It's been quite the journey, but I'm looking forward to what's next. Life's thrown some curveballs, but here I am swinging away. I was supposed to visit my family next week when my father unexpectedly called me. He never does that. Upon a very awkward conversation, I received this information. Even though agreeing to cut contacts, my father began talking with his eldest daughter a few years ago. He systematically updated her on my life. Since she learned I am doing okay and am soon to start my own family, she suddenly expressed desire to meet me. She has no family on her own, and that somehow made her value our sister bond more. I kindly rejected that offer and said I would rather not. Then followed 20 minutes of a pointless conversation with such arguments as, I am becoming older and want my children to reconcile. She was young and stupid, now she regrets, etc., etc. When I reminded him that she basically harassed my mother and wished me dead, he called me out for being vengeful towards my sis and said he taught me better. I then said that I don't think I deserve the honor of meeting her and don't seek to earn that honor, and he hung up on me. I know my father is an old man who doesn't want any drama. However, my mother is the sweetest person alive, and a mere thought that someone in a right mind could harass her to the point she was at hospital makes me sick. I don't have any interest in this sister bonding BS, and I don't care what she has to say. So, AI Tia for not even giving her a chance to speak with me. Additional information from OP comment. You are more supportive than I expected, guys, so thanks, guys. Just wanted to quickly address the infidelity part before going to sleep. I live in Europe, and it's past midnight. I noticed some people were concerned about my lack of judgment when it comes to my mom being a mistress and breaking up the family. I personally would rather not go into deep details about who, with whom, and why, since it is the info I am not comfortable sharing with all the Reddit. However, I would say the thing that is relevant to my post and my sis. My mom is not an angel, but she is not a homewrecker either, because the home already didn't exist when she and my father met. He wasn't loyal before that. His family knew. I don't know their exact emotions on that, but he wasn't loyal for years before my mother, and he and his wife still lived together. Even when he met my mom, they knew about her, and showed no animosity towards her, even the CS. They met a few times and sis was indifferent. My mother getting pregnant was the reason the shit show started. That is the reason why, regardless of my mom's actions, I am so not okay with the harassing part from sis. She wanted abortion, so dad would not waste his money on another child, then wanted me dead. As for the no contact request from mom part, I mentioned in comments. Guys, if you read please what I write, my mother said, don't let her come near me or my baby, after almost losing her unborn child due to endless harassment. My so-called sister wished me dead, multiple times. She stopped only when my father agreed to leave all his savings to his old family. I know that because other people around me shared that info when I became older, not only my mother. She doesn't talk about any of my father's relatives at all, if she is not asked to. Relevant comments church often. NTA sounds like she wants to reach out for selfish reasons and wants you to just roll over and pretend she hasn't hated you your entire life. Even though her anger is misdirected, you seem to understand why people might scapegoat you as the living embodiment of the death of their family. But harassing someone into the hospital and then finding a way to continue that in the hospital is a bridge too far. I'm not a strong math guy, but if you're 24 and she's 55, then she was 31 when she did this to your mother. She wasn't some middle schooler, she was an adult over 30. Young and stupid indeed. OP. Indeed. The young and stupid part cracked me up as well. Yep, she is not much younger than my mother. They even share the same name. And I think it may be one of the many reasons why Mum decided to keep her own surname, LL Chakramama, 318. NTA. She gets to have feelings about her dad cheating on her mom. If it had been me, I would have raised hell. But she crossed the line when she actively took it out on a pregnant woman and became vengeful towards you. Your dad was in the wrong for ever agreeing to cut himself off from his child for the sake of someone else. Let's be clear about that. You and your mom never ever needed to have contact with her, but he is still her parent. It was on him to create healthy boundaries for everyone in this situation, and he failed. OP. To be honest, I wouldn't care if he talks with her or not if it wasn't for my mom. She insisted on cutting her off after my birth, or, to be precise, make sure I never see her around me or my daughter because I will call the police. The boundaries is something my dad was never strong in. He tends to avoid conflicts at all costs. He is constantly trying to force people to be okay with each other and be forgiving. So if my mother wouldn't do this us of them fit, I am 100% sure he would constantly try to make sis and my mother reconcile, invite her to dinners in our home, etc. This inability to leave things as it is was the reason my mother was harassed in the first place. I love him, but man can't understand why his daughter wouldn't be besties with his mistress and got it only after she called mom at the hospital. Update. March 13th, 2024. Hey everyone! So, I just got back home and had a chance to read all your replies. Wow, there were so many more than I thought there would be, and let me tell you, some of them were super interesting. But hey, I've got a small update to share, but before I get into that, I want to respond to some of you. First off, to those of you who talked about the problem I mentioned. You know, how my sister and I are basically like two people from different planets. She didn't even like me before I was even born, and now out of nowhere she wants to meet up. I want to say a huge thanks for sharing your thoughts. You guys really helped me out. I'm not great at handling situations where someone tries to suddenly become super close to me, almost like they're rushing into my personal space without a warning. So I really needed to know if I was making a big deal out of nothing. It's tricky to figure out on your own, especially since I don't really know my sister at all. The only thing I know is that she was, let's say, not exactly cheering for me to come into the world. From what I've heard, she's not the easiest person to get along with, but honestly, I've never been tempted to find out for myself. As for my mother's infidelity, many people were not happy with the sweetest person part, and even less with my further explaining, which I find absolutely understandable. Many of you were polite and respectful in your argumentation, so thank you for that. Actually, Upon reading my own answers the next day without context, I can see why so many people were confident that I am trying to do black and white here. I don't actually think it is necessary to have a huge discussion, since it is not a main point of my post anyway. But for those who were respectful to me, I wanted to make my only and last point here. My position on that matter is not that cheating is totally okay, since it is my mom who did the nasty, and or she wasn't the first mistress to my father. Can get a little defensive on that, I know. But don't blame me. Blame the flashbacks from my childhood when I constantly heard all the things you wrote from my father's friends. XD, sorry, kidding. But not really. My position is that I have decided to refrain from judging my mother on that. In other words, not approving like my pops is a cheater anyway, so it is totally okay to sleep with him then. It is rather, I don't think it is my place to shame my mother. She made a decision and faced the consequences. I leave that to her, and I won't let this impact our relationship. That's it. You may not agree with my point of view, and it's fine. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and I'm entitled to my own perspective also. And the perspective is, I saw only kindness and love from her. This is my way of showing love and kindness back. Please be respectful. For those who actually insulted my mother or me by calling names and wishing me being cheated on to get the feeling, I hope people you love never make any mistakes. Oh boy, you would let them know they are not worthy of anything anymore. Now to the actual update. Okay, so here's what's been going down since last time. To be honest, not a ton has changed, but there's this one thing. My dad had this amazing idea to get my mom involved to try and convince me about the whole meeting my sister deal. And oh boy, did that turn into a complete mess. My mom's now super upset, crying on Skype, asking me if I really want to meet my sister. I told her straight up that I couldn't care less about her. Meanwhile, my dad's losing it, blaming it all on how my mom raised me. Super fun, right? Oh, and get this. He actually went ahead and gave my sister my phone number saying we should settle things like adults. That just made me even more annoyed. Because of some stuff going on with renewing my place to live, I often have to answer calls from numbers I don't recognize. Guess I've got to start paying super close attention to the country code before I answer my phone now. After the first Skype call turned into a complete nightmare, there was a bit of a break when my dad stepped out for a smoke. That's when my mom decided to call me back, just us this time. I took the chance to ask her about this whole no-contact rule with my sister. My mom told me straight up that she was never okay with my sister being around me because she was legit scared of how much my sister seemed to hate me. She didn't trust her at all. But she also said that she never outright stopped my dad from talking to her. She just really didn't want any of that drama near our home or in our lives. So my dad actually did try to keep in touch with her a bit when I was younger, meeting up with her now and then. But then this big car accident happened, and after that, my sister didn't call him or even visit him in the hospital once. That hit my dad hard, and he ended up deciding on his own to cut all contact with her. I then asked her, does she have any idea of what sis could possibly want from me? But she had no clue. So that's what it is now. If some drama happens, I will update, but I probably would not go to a every single new thing is the new post mode. I have a life to live and a wedding to plan. Just maybe we'll give some closure in case there would be one. Thanks for wasting your time reading this, and have a nice life. Top comments Veridin 1. Personally, just tell her to text you. Be short and don't engage. She can't meet you, you don't have a bond, so just be straight with her. You never liked me, wished me harm, and could never have my best interest at heart. What do you want now? Short, sweet, to the point. Good luck. Glass Girl 1021. It sounds like your father is experiencing some late life guilt about his choices and feels making happy family will absolve him. It's not your job to fix this for him, and if you don't see yourself getting anything out of meeting her, don't. Maybe suggest if she gasps something to say, she can write you a letter. Now for the next story. Would I be the a-hole if I told my M46 kids, M16, F18, their recently deceased mother, F44, cheated on me? The wound's still a bit fresh. A month ago, my wife of 22 years tragically died in a car crash. Cynthia was one of those drivers that loved to stare into her phone, and unfortunately, this bad habit caught up with her in the last week of January. I was pretty devastated when the police showed up at my door and told me she had a fatal accident, and I wanted to honor her somehow. At the time of the accident, I had no idea she was having an affair. The last 4 or 5 months, I did notice she was pulling away, and our intimacy decreased. But I thought this was just something that happened to couples after 20 years, so I didn't pay much mind to it. But at least from what she told me, Cynthia started to get into writing. She was constantly on her laptop, typing away at all hours. Cynthia had told me she was super excited about writing a book. It was going to be this amazing fantasy story, kind of like mixing the old with the new. Imagine a place full of magic, with orcs and elves, but they're not just using swords and spells. They've got laser guns and all sorts of high-tech gadgets. A place where really advanced humans show up and start hanging out with these magical creatures. It sounded super cool, and she was really into it. She even said that once she got a draft she was happy with, she'd let me read it. To remember her in a special way, I thought, why not finish what she started? I planned to find her book draft, tidy it up with the help of a professional writer, and then publish it. I thought that would be a great tribute to her. So I went on her laptop to find her book, but there was no sign of it anywhere. No book file, nothing. I checked her internet browser, thinking maybe she wrote it in Google Docs or something and left it there. But when I opened it, all I found were a bunch of websites she had saved. One of them was her Facebook messages, and there, I saw a lot of messages with a guy named John. When I looked through Cynthia's messages, I found a bunch of chats with someone named John, a guy I've never heard of before. They seemed really close, talking about meeting up and sharing photos. The last thing John said to her was that he loved her, just 2 days before the accident, and he mentioned he was heading to Germany for work. It turns out they had met up at our place a few times, which made me feel really uneasy, so I went ahead and changed the locks on the doors. Whether John knows what happened or not, or if he's back, I don't really care. Finding all this out hurt a lot. I did find a Google Drive tab open on her laptop, hoping maybe that's where her book was. But no, there wasn't any fantasy book draft. Instead, there was a document she shared with John that was basically a plan for how they were going to divorce me, try to turn my kids against me, and take the house and as much money as they could. One part of the plan mentioned that Cynthia had been secretly taking a bit of money every month and putting it into a separate account. I took care of some money stuff, making sure everything was okay with the bank, and that my kids' college funds were all set. Also, I've been going to therapy sessions 2 times every week to help me deal with all the crazy stuff happening. It's really weird trying to be mad at someone who isn't around anymore, especially when everyone else misses her a lot and keeps saying how amazing she was as a wife and mom. I had this big question for my therapist. Should I tell my kids about the stuff their mom, Cynthia, did and what she was planning before she passed away? My therapist kind of warned me to think carefully about it. He explained that my kids just lost their mom, and if I went ahead and told them all this stuff, it would be like throwing mud on her memory. That fancy term he used, damnatio memoriae, means making it like someone never existed, or erasing all good memories of them. So, it's like I'm stuck between wanting to be honest and not wanting to ruin how my kids remember their mom. Maybe now is not the time, but I think eventually would be a time for my kids to know. There is no consensus bot on ATA. Most people advised against telling the kids right now. Update post, March 9th, 2024, 5 days later. Okay, so a few updates from what's been going on. First off, I took care of some bank stuff. I managed to get control over Cynthia's bank account and moved the money into a special savings account just for the kids. That's all sorted out now. And guess what? Turns out my kids had a feeling something was up, even before we talked about it. So here's what happened. On Tuesday night, my oldest kid, Michelle, came up to me with my son, Jason, and they looked like they had something serious on their minds. They kind of staged a mini family meeting in the living room. Michelle was the one who broke the silence and said, "We think mom was cheating on you." I mean, wow, right? They weren't totally sure, but it was really bothering them. They saw how upset I've been for the last month, totally wrecked by grief, and they thought it was only fair that I know what they were thinking. They started noticing stuff like how Cynthia was hardly ever around. And on the off chance she was home, she'd make these odd comments about me, kind of out of the blue. It was like they were piecing together a puzzle from bits and pieces they'd picked up, and it led them to believe something was off. Stuff like, "Isn't it weird your dad's working late this week?" This is one of those seeds Cynthia mentioned in her document that she wanted to plant in the kids. Michelle said her suspicions went high the week before the accident, when she got home from school and saw a strange jacket on the coat hook by the front door. It wasn't any jacket Jason or I had, so she was very suspicious about it. I told both my kids that I didn't tell them, but I found evidence on their mom's computer when I was looking for the book she said she was writing. Michelle wanted to see the evidence, but Jason said he doesn't want to think or talk about mom for a while. I shared the info with Michelle after she insisted she already suspected her mom and was ready for it. It feels good to now have someone close that can talk to me about this beyond my therapist. Yesterday afternoon, I was home alone when I heard someone jiggling the back door's knob. I went to the door and saw a man I never saw before trying to use a key on the lock. I told him to step back from the door and he almost jumped. I opened the door a crack and asked him who he was and what he was doing in my backyard. It was John, Cynthia's affair partner. He told me that he worked with my wife, and he just got back from a trip and saw Cynthia died on social media, and him and Cynthia were starting a business. They had a business bank account with his investment money in the business, and he was wondering if I could help him get the business funds transferred over. I looked him straight in the eye and said I was at the bank, and Cynthia didn't have an extra business account, and I had no idea what he was talking about. John also said that he wanted to check my wife's things for any sensitive business documents. I said he was a stranger and wasn't welcome in my home, especially since he tried to enter without permission. John looked defeated, but did suggest he would consult with a lawyer about his sensitive business documents and business funds.